Actually, Deputy Sullivan was first, taking you then, and we'll roll on from there. And please strict on the time, because I need to. I want to give everyone an opportunity.
I just want to tease out one particular thing. Can I thank both Ms Graham and Mr McCarthy for their presentations, and I just really want to hone in on what Ms Graham said about, now I know we're going to have a further meeting in relation to the European Commission and so on, but you did tell us, and certainly I wasn't aware of it, that there has been further correspondence to the Minister in relation to the Water Framework Directive and the issue of cost recovery. And Mr McCarthy also referred to the issue of the user pays. Now, these are the two issues that are raised in the letter to the chair of the Expert Commission from the European Commission, where they say that when we signed up to the Wastewater Directive back in 2010, that effectively that we were covered by that directive and that we didn't have any kind of exemption. So, and they were the two issues that were raised by the Commission. Now, I know we're going to be meeting the Commission, and I'm not going to stray into that area, but I just think because it has been raised that I think the committee should be given whatever information there is in relation to the correspondence to the Minister. And, you know, is there information now that, and I don't believe it's in the public arena, in relation to whether the decisions that we make here will have cost implications in terms of possible EU fines, and, you know, is this information that can be given to this committee so that we can consider it? Because when we have our meeting in relation to the EU Commission, that's going to be less than a month away from the date at which we have to make our final decisions. So I think any information that can be given to us in this regard is information that we require in order to make our recommendations. So that's my main question, really. And maybe Mr McCarthy can tease out a little further. I'm not an expert on fiscal matters, and you talked about, I think your point was that if you ring-fence the funding, that therefore you're actually imposing an extra cost, or extra cost in terms of collection. But I'm not sure if I understood you correctly, so maybe you could just elaborate a bit further on that.
Thank you. Just, Deputy, in relation to the first question you asked there on the correspondence from the Commission, the Commissioner, that was the letter I referred to in our closed session that we will be making available to everybody. We just have to receiving that, so that will be available to you either this evening or tomorrow morning, hopefully.
Okay, but I mean, I'd be interested if the department have further information.
Yeah, no, absolutely, absolutely. I'm just giving you clarification over one part of it.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Deputy. Yes, we made the letter arrived on the 12th of January, and we've brought it to the attention, and as the Chair said, it's been made available to the members. It's a short letter which follows on from the noting that the European Commission has made the submission to the Expert Commission, and points out some issues around the directive being a flexible instrument allowing member states a margin of appreciation, but then refers to cost recovery and the polluters pay principle, and talks about Ireland, that it's therefore important that the ongoing decision-making process leads to sound and lasting results which must bring Ireland back into compliance with the directive. And it gives some views from the Commission in terms of how the fair balance might be struck. And one of them I highlighted in the presentation, which was the recovery of costs must ensure that the Irish water sector meets the infrastructure needs. And then it then goes in to talk about how consumption of water might be set at a normal use at a reasonable level, charging for excessive, you know, it's going into the components of the Expert Commission recommendation in that regard. So I think that's what you'll be addressing at a future meeting. I think from the issue around the investment in water and wastewater infrastructure, I suppose it's relevant that the Commission, in terms of compliance with the Water Framework Directive and charging, also has a number of open infringements with us in terms of urban wastewater compliance, and a lot of the 5.5 billion in the Irish Water Business Plan is to address that infringement and to bring us into compliance there. Similarly, we are, on the drinking water side, we have a pilot infringement which requires investment in drinking water by both Irish Water and the rural water sector. So I think when talk about compliance with the directive, it's a holistic compliance I would take, but I think that the letter will be circulated, as I understand it, by the Commission.
Are you okay with
Yeah,
that,
well, just
Deputy?
one further question on it. Is there any indication that there would be financial implications to not having any kind of charge for people who use excess water?
The compliance with the directive, ultimately, the onus of proof is on us as state, and if the Commission feels we're not in compliance, obviously it could go to the European Court of Justice, and then fines could be imposed. Fines under that system involve both an upfront fine and daily fines. So the letter is only talking about compliance, but the consequence of non-compliance with the directive is settled by the European Court of Justice.
Okay, thank you. And Mr.